In this pod, we'll provide a brief overview of 19th century poetry.
The early 19th century brought with it a great number of famous poets. Among them, the most famous are identified with a group known as the Romantic poets, which included John Keats, Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and William Wordsworth.
The Romantic era was an artistic and intellectual movement. It began in Europe towards the end of the 18th century. Remember, that's the 1700s. It was a reaction against the Enlightenment of the previous century. The Enlightenment placed a lot of emphasis upon reason, intelligence, objectivity, and facts. It portrayed reality as something physical, measurable, and scientific.
In comparison, the Romantic movement portrayed reality as something deeply emotional, natural, and transcendent. While their predecessors had seen society as a place of order and authority, the Romantics felt that society could often alienate and oppress people. You can see this changing opinion even in the language that poetry uses. Enlightenment poetry tends to use traditional forms, such as the heroic couplet and formal language. In response, Romantic poetry used innovative new forms and common everyday language. It emphasized intuition over reason, and the country over the city.
Perhaps as a result, 19th century poetry focused on imagination, nature, medievalism, and the supernatural. Many poets considered the imagination to be a spiritual force that was capable of changing the world. The natural world was also a common feature in this poetry. William Wordsworth wrote many different poems about nature and was repulsed by the idea of the urban environment encroaching upon it.
Medievalism is a nod back to the medieval period and the values it upheld. Keats and Coleridge were attracted to the mysticism surrounding figures like the knight. Medieval poetry often included a chivalrous figure entering mystical and unfamiliar circumstances in faraway places. This links to another common feature in Romantic poetry, the supernatural. The Enlightenment, or Age of Reason, was heavily focused on all that was measurable and scientific. Perhaps in retaliation, Romantic poetry focused on the supernatural, that which cannot be explained rationally in any way.
When talking about Romantic poetry, it's important to consider it as a new and reactionary movement. It was a different, fresh approach that became hugely popular.